Hello VEDA, it is day 9, and today we are discussing our hopes and dreams. A Twitter error earlier may have led you to believe that we were discussing hops and dreams. That is not entirely accurate, although I will be enjoying this tasty cider beverage as I talk to you. Today is probably my most interesting and most personally horrifying vlog yet. My dearest hope and dream is to have my novel published. I wrote The Killing Type 2 years ago, and it has since gone through many, many incarnations and many revisions, and I hope it's something that people will one day find interesting. Basically, the pitch is Charlotte Grimley does a decent job hiding her schizophrenia, except when she's trying to ignore the white noise buzzing in her ears and hold down a job at the same time. All she wants is to be normal, but when a series of murders staged as suicide shakes her small town, Charlotte finds herself struggling to hold her reality together. As the body count rises, the white noise becomes deafening, and the looming threat of a killer does nothing to soothe her anxiety. Charlotte begins waking in odd places, discovering mysterious bruises and broken fingernails. Her hallucinations fill with menacing shadows and grotesque waking visions of mutilated friends. Even Charlotte begins to doubt her innocence. Half-remembered incidents begin to click into place and align with the suicides. Flashes of buried memories hold the key to solving the crimes, but Charlotte has to hold her disintegrating life together long enough to figure out the answer. If she can't decide for the events of her past, real or imagined, she'll be convicted, or worse, committed. But it is also a story that I am very excited about, and I hope that everyone else will be as excited as my friends and I are about this concept. Of course, I always think that they're lying to me and telling me that it's a good book because I am their friend. But I guess at some point I'm going to have to take their word for it. So what I'm going to do for you tonight is I am going to read an excerpt from this book and hope that it entertains you, and hope that I am not terrified and suitably tipsy on my lovely cider beverage, and that I don't butcher it terribly. The noise beyond her ears intensified. She sat in the middle of a conversation, shadows talking around her, and Charlotte looking up at them as if trapped under glass. One shadow stood out amongst the rest, a shadow disanimate and silent. The rest milled around, ignoring it as they ignored Charlotte. The figure suddenly tilted its head, less a movement of neck and muscle than a flicker and a change in position. A finger pressed against its face in the same stark motion, pressing where lips would be on the defined body. A chill ran down Charlotte's spine, leaving harsh, icy trails that barbed, hooking into her skin. The shadow, continuing its jerking movements, bent to peer into Charlotte's cage, hands flattening as if glass stood between them. Charlotte pushed herself away from it, her back hitting the invisible barrier. The shadow grinned, rows of sharp, white teeth blazing from its mouth. She ran. The glass vanished, and Charlotte dissipated the other shadows, running through them and into the white landscape, the edges growing darker now, the white slipping gray, the gray burning black. She looked back through the tangle of her hair to the shadow still watching, still grinning with malice at her. Her foot fell into nothing, and she dropped, down into the black, down into the dark, where everything was shadow, and everything grinned sharply white. The ground below turned sickly red, and she felt the damp matter slide up her arms before enclosing her entirely. She felt the cold first, biting at her arms and legs, little pointed teeth chipping and snipping away at her skin. The ground beneath her hands crumbled and clung to her palms, dirt and dead grass and bugs. She spit the soil out of her mouth, pushing herself up. She brushed her hair out of her face, the matted strands revealing the park, streetlights glowing and cars passing by. Standing, Charlotte found she was barefoot, the grime racing up her legs in streaks and patches. She crossed the park, heading for the puddle of light below the first lamp. Under it, she saw the grit and dirt mashed into her legs. Ahead, her apartment sat nestled in silence. She looked back, wondering where her shoes had gone. The shadow with its grin stood just beyond the next lamp. It twitched pointed fingers at her, a mocking wave of familiarity. For the second time, Charlotte ran. The white receded from her eyes, replaced by solid ground and trees. She felt the rock beneath her feet, cutting as she flew across the road. Night sounds filled her ears, the drone of crickets and cars deep in the dark. Charlotte resisted the urge to look back, afraid to lose her footing, afraid to fall again into a different nightmare. Slowly, her body reassured her she no longer slept, shocks of pain darting from her feet, stabbing into her chest. Frantic hands fumbled for her keys, finding nothing. She pounded on the door, twisted the knob, and hit at it harder. The door gave way, and she skittered through, looking through it long enough to see the shadow waiting before slamming the door in its face. Elizabeth had stepped back, eyes wide. "Charlotte, where have you been?" Her voice was clipped, afraid. Charlotte backed away from the door, staring at the knob as if it might begin turning, the shadow breaking in. "What happened?" Elizabeth asked, voice softer. "I have no idea. I woke up in the children's park. I was in my room, and then I was in the park," Charlotte answered, voice halting. She bowed her head, turning her arms up. She rocked on her feet unsteadily. "What is it?" Elizabeth leaned to the side, trying to see around her friend. Charlotte turned around, her arms held before her. The dirt adhered to her skin, sticky red between broken twigs. Her fingertips were covered with it, thick and clotting black. She stared at her own flesh, eyes wide. Her voice rasped from her throat, low and broken. "Whose blood is this?" So, there is your snippet of The Killing Type. It is one of my favorite scenes in the entire book. And if you enjoyed that, then I expect that you should enjoy the rest of it, as it is, hopefully, similarly creepy in whatever vein that just was. And I hope that one day I can share with you the joyous news that I have been agented, or that I have a book deal, or even that it is going to be an actual papery thing that you can buy in the store and hold or have on your e-reader. And I guess that's it. So that is my big hope and dream. I intended this to be a short blog, and it's just not going to happen. So I hope that you have enjoyed listening to me ramble for the last 9 days, and that you continue to stick it out with me through the rest of this crazy venture. I shall see you tomorrow for day 10, where I will be dressed up and something.